My husband wiped out my entire bank account while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed. He texted that he deserved it, after everything he'd done for me. I sent back a single thumbs up. And when I walked out of the hospital the next morning, I already knew exactly what I was going to do next. My husband wiped out our entire bank account on a Wednesday afternoon while I was in a coma. Not a regular sleep. A medically induced coma after a stroke that had killed me twice on the operating table. The doctors had to bring me back both times. Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here. If you believe that betrayal should have consequences and that survival makes you stronger, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more women who need to hear this. Now let's see how I fought back. I was 42 years old, lying unconscious in the ICU at Providence Hospital with tubes down my throat and a machine breathing for me. The neurologist had told my emergency contact, my sister Riley, not my husband, that the next 48 hours would determine if I'd survive, and if I did, whether I'd have permanent brain damage. That's when Caleb decided to clean out our savings. $73,000. Every penny I'd saved from 15 years of brutal work in commercial real estate. Money I'd earned showing properties on weekends, negotiating deals past midnight, building a career from nothing while my husband played artist and contributed exactly $0 to our household. I didn't know any of this until I woke up 36 hours later. Couldn't speak right. Couldn't move my right side. But I could read. One text message on my phone. From my husband. Not, "Thank God you're alive." Not, "I'm so sorry." Not, "I'm on my way." Just a screenshot of our bank account with a zero balance and a sentence that changed everything. "I deserve this after everything I've done for you." He'd robbed me while I was unconscious in a hospital bed and had the audacity to tell me he deserved it. I looked at that message for a long time. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I sent back a thumbs up emoji. My husband thought that meant I was broken. Defeated. Too sick to fight back. He thought wrong. I'm Ella Brennan. And this is the story of how I made my husband regret every single dollar he stole while I lay dying. But to understand what came next, you need to know who I was before that Wednesday. Before the stroke. Before the betrayal. Before I became the kind of woman who could send a thumbs up emoji to her husband and mean it as a declaration of war. 15 years ago, I was nobody in Portland's commercial real estate market. Just another assistant at a mid-tier agency, showing cramped studio apartments to college kids who couldn't afford them. I wore cheap suits from Ross Dress for less and walked everywhere because I couldn't afford parking downtown. I came from a working-class neighborhood in southeast Portland. My dad worked construction. My mom cleaned houses. Neither of them went to college. When I told them I wanted to go into real estate, my dad said, "That's for rich people with connections. You don't have either." He wasn't wrong. But he also didn't know how stubborn I could be. I started at the bottom. Worked every weekend while my friends brunched in the Pearl District and posted pictures of mimosas and avocado toast. Worked holidays when the office was empty and nobody called. Worked through flu seasons and family emergencies because missing a day meant missing a commission, and missing a commission meant staying broke. My first year I made $28,000. Barely enough to cover rent and ramen. But I showed up. Every single day. Smiled through property showings even when my feet ached. Answered calls at midnight from panicked landlords. Built a reputation as someone reliable, someone who did what she promised. Year 2 I made $35,000. Year 3 $42,000. By year 5 I'd broken 6 figures and moved from studio apartments to commercial properties. Small stuff at first. Retail spaces in strip malls, office suites in forgettable buildings. But each deal taught me something. How to read clients. How to negotiate. How to push without pushing too hard. Property managers started requesting me specifically. Small-time landlords recommended me to their friends. Word spread that Ella Brennan was sharp, dependable, and didn't waste anyone's time. By the time I turned 35, I was showing multi-million-dollar properties to developers and investors with serious capital. Mixed-use projects. Waterfront developments. The kind of deals where one commission could equal what I used to make in an entire year. I wasn't the best agent in Portland, but I was in the top tier. And I'd gotten there without connections, without a trust fund, without anything except work and more work, and refusing to quit when things got hard. My commissions weren't just paychecks. They were proof. Proof that I could build something from nothing. Proof that hard work actually meant something. proof that a girl from Southeast Portland with no advantages could make it. I saved aggressively. Lived in a modest one-bedroom condo in a neighborhood that hadn't gentrified yet. Drove a Honda Civic I'd bought used and maintained meticulously. Packed lunches instead of buying $15 salads downtown. While other agents at my firm leased luxury cars and took European vacations, I funneled every spare dollar into savings. $73,612. That's what I'd built by age 42. Every dollar represented something. A late-night contract negotiation. A difficult client I'd smiled through. A weekend I chose work over rest. A holiday I spent alone in the office. That money wasn't just savings. It was my security. My emergency fund. My proof that I'd made something of myself. My promise that I'd never be broke and scared again. And Caleb took all of it while I was dying. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I met Caleb Brennan 12 years ago at a gallery opening in the Pearl District. One of those pretentious First Thursday events where people who don't understand art pretend to while drinking cheap wine from plastic cups. I'd gone with a colleague who bailed after 20 minutes, leaving me stranded among abstract paintings that looked like expensive therapy sessions. I was about to leave when I saw him, standing in front of a canvas covered in aggressive red slashes, looking both proud and vulnerable in a way that made him magnetic. His paintings weren't good. Even I could tell that, and I knew nothing about art. But Caleb had this energy that drew people in. Like he needed protection from a world that didn't appreciate his genius. He approached me first. Asked what I thought of his work. Most people at those events lied and said everything was brilliant. I didn't. I said I didn't understand it but could feel the emotion behind it. He laughed. Said that was the best compliment he'd gotten all night. We talked for 3 hours. About art, about work, about what we wanted from life. He listened when I talked about difficult clients and impossible deadlines. Made me laugh about things that had stressed me out all week. When he looked at me, I felt like the only person in the room who mattered. I was 30, climbing fast in my career and lonely in ways I didn't want to admit. He was 32, charming, attentive, and made me feel like success didn't mean being alone forever. We dated for 8 months before getting married in a small ceremony at a garden venue in Southeast Portland. Just close friends and family. Simple flowers. A buffet instead of a sit-down dinner. Nothing fancy, but it felt real. I didn't mind that his art career was struggling. I made good money. He made me happy. That felt like a fair trade. In the beginning, Caleb handled everything at home. I'd come back from a 12-hour day and find dinner ready, the apartment clean, laundry done. He'd rub my shoulders while I vented about clients who changed their minds at the last second or deals that fell through. He called himself my support system. Said his job was to make sure I had a stable home to return to after conquering the world. I believed him. Thought we were partners building something together even if our contributions looked different. I earned the money. He maintained the life that money made possible. It wasn't traditional, but it worked. Or so I thought. Looking back now from a hospital bed with half my body not working right, I can see all the signs I missed. Or maybe didn't want to see. Around year 5, Caleb's gallery showings got smaller and less frequent. His paintings, dozens of them, collected dust in our spare room. The calls from gallery owners stopped. The rejection emails piled up. His art career wasn't struggling anymore. It was dead. But he kept pretending, kept calling himself an artist, kept treating my career like it was somehow less meaningful than his non-existent one. The resentment started small. Little comments wrapped in humor that stung more than I wanted to admit. Must be nice to be the successful one, he'd say when I mentioned closing a big deal. Some of us care about more than just money, he'd mutter when I worked late. Easy to have opinions when you're not putting yourself out there creatively, he'd snap when I suggested he look for actual paying work. He stopped asking about my day. Stopped caring if I was stressed or tired or struggling. Started spending hours on his phone, angling the screen away whenever I walked into the room. He took weekend trips with friends I'd never met. Called them inspiration retreats. And came home vague about where he'd been and what he'd done. Got defensive if I asked too many questions. He opened a separate bank account without discussing it with me first. Said he needed it for his art supplies business. I never questioned it. Never asked to see statements. Never wondered why an artist who wasn't selling paintings needed a business account. I was too tired to interrogate every small change. Too focused on the next deal, the next commission, the next client. I told myself it was normal. Couples evolve. People need space. Marriage isn't perfect. I was working 80-hour weeks. Traveling for property tours. Negotiating contracts past midnight. I didn't have energy left to manage Caleb's feelings or question his choices. And 3 months before the stroke, my body started sending signals I was too stubborn to hear. Blinding headaches that made me see spots during property showings. Strange numbness in my right arm that I blamed on sleeping wrong. Tightness in my chest I convinced myself was just anxiety about a difficult client. I'd pop Advil, chug coffee and push through with a professional smile. Just stress, I told myself. Too much work, not enough sleep. I ignored the way my vision blurred when I stared at contracts too long. The exhaustion that 8 hours of sleep couldn't fix. The tingling in my fingers during important meetings. I was 42 and healthy. My last checkup had been fine. I exercised when I could. Didn't smoke. Had no family history of stroke or heart disease. So when my body screamed that something was catastrophically wrong, I turned up the volume on work and pretended not to hear. I had a major deal closing. A waterfront development project worth $2 million. The commission alone would max out my retirement contributions for the year and then some. I couldn't afford to be sick. Couldn't afford to slow down. Couldn't afford to admit my body was failing. That decision almost killed me. But before the stroke, before the betrayal, before everything fell apart, I was Ella Brennan. Successful. Independent. Secure in what I'd built. A woman who'd clawed her way up from nothing and had $73,000 in savings to prove it. A woman who thought she knew who she'd married. I was so completely, catastrophically wrong. And that thumbs up emoji I sent from my hospital bed? That was the moment I stopped being the woman who ignored warning signs and started being the woman who would make my husband pay for every single thing he'd taken while I lay dying. The stroke happened on a Tuesday morning during what should have been a routine property showing. I'd been working on this deal for 3 weeks. A gorgeous Victorian conversion in downtown Portland that had been on the market for 2 months. Beautiful bones, original crown molding, hardwood floors that gleamed in the morning light. The kind of property that sold itself if you could just get the right buyers through the door. The clients were a young couple in their early 30s, tech money, the kind who could write a cash offer if the place felt right. Kyle worked in software development. His wife Emma was something in digital marketing. They'd been looking for 6 months and were getting impatient. This was their 3rd showing with me that week. I could feel them getting close to a decision. Just needed to seal it. We were standing in the master bedroom on the 2nd floor. I was pointing out the oversized windows that flooded the room with natural light, talking about the original molding that had been carefully restored when the pain hit. Not a headache this time. Something different. Something catastrophic. It felt like someone had detonated a bomb behind my eyes. White-hot pain that made my vision blur and my knees buckle. The numbness I'd been ignoring in my right arm for weeks suddenly spread like wildfire. Across my shoulder, down my torso, into my leg. I tried to say, "Excuse me," but nothing came out right. Just garbled sounds that didn't match the words forming in my head. My mouth wouldn't cooperate. My tongue felt thick and useless. Emma's face morphed from polite interest to horror. "Are you okay?" I tried to answer. Couldn't. The right side of my body wasn't responding to commands anymore. I reached for the doorframe with my left hand to steady myself, but my legs gave out. I collapsed on the hardwood floor. "Heart." Heard Emma scream. Saw Kyle drop to his knees beside me, his face pale with panic. "Call 911, he shouted. Emma was already on her phone, voice shaking as she gave the address to the dispatcher. I lay there on that beautiful restored hardwood, unable to move my right side, unable to speak, unable to do anything except think with crystal clarity. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Terror flooded my brain. Not the kind of fear you feel watching a horror movie or riding a roller coaster. The primal kind. The kind that comes when your body stops obeying your commands and you realize you're not in control anymore. I tried to move my right arm. Nothing. Tried to move my right leg. Nothing. Tried to speak. Just garbled nonsense. Kyle was talking to me, saying something about help being on the way, asking me to squeeze his hand. I squeezed with my left. My right hand lay limp and useless on the floor. "Stay with us," Emma kept saying, her voice breaking. "Please stay with us." I remember thinking absurdly, this is so embarrassing. Here I was, a professional who prided myself on being reliable and put together, collapsed on the floor of a property I was trying to sell, drooling and unable to speak. Then I thought, I'm 42 years old. This can't be happening. This happens to old people. People with health problems. Not me. But it was happening. My body was shutting down and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The ambulance arrived in what felt like hours but was probably 7 minutes. Paramedics rushed in with equipment and urgent voices. They asked me questions I couldn't answer. Shined lights in my eyes. Checked my vital signs. Possible stroke, one of them said. We need to move fast. They loaded me onto a stretcher. The last thing I saw before they carried me out was Emma crying and Kyle holding her, both of them looking terrified. The ambulance ride is a blur. Sirens screaming. Paramedics talking in clipped medical terminology I didn't understand. Someone started in 4. Someone else was on the radio coordinating with the hospital. I kept trying to move my right side. Kept failing. The terror was overwhelming now, drowning out everything else. They rushed me into Providence Hospital downtown. Bright lights. People in scrubs moving with controlled urgency. Someone wheeling me down hallways at speed. Voices shouting medical terms. Then a doctor's face appeared above me. A woman, maybe 50, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Mrs. Brennan, I'm Dr. Patel. You're having a stroke. We need to do emergency surgery to remove the clot. Do you understand? I tried to nod. Manage something that might have looked like agreement. You're going to be okay, she said, but her eyes told a different story. We're going to take care of you. Then everything went black. Later, much later, they told me what happened next. Ischemic stroke. A blood clot had traveled to my brain and blocked blood flow. At 42 years old, with no obvious risk factors, my brain had started dying. They performed emergency surgery to remove the clot. It worked, but my brain had already started swelling dangerously. To save my life, they induced a medical coma. Put me under with drugs and hoped my brain would recover enough to bring me back. I flatlined twice during those first hours. My heart just stopped. They brought me back both times with machines and medication and sheer determination. I was unconscious for 36 hours. A day and a half where I simply didn't exist. No dreams. No awareness. Just nothing. A black void where my life paused while doctors and nurses fought to save it. I have no memory of those hours. Can't tell you what it felt like to be that close to death. Can't describe the sensation of your heart stopping and being forced back to life. But while my body lay in that hospital bed hooked up to machines with my future uncertain and my life hanging by a thread, other things were happening in the world I couldn't see. Things I wouldn't discover until I woke up. Things that would change everything. When I finally came back, it was gradual. Not like waking up from normal sleep. More like surfacing from deep underwater. Slow, disorienting, with pressure in my head and confusion about where I was. The fluorescent lights felt like knives stabbing into my eyes. Everything was too bright, too loud, too much. I had tubes in my arms and something down my throat that made me gag. My mouth tasted like metal and felt dry as sand. A nurse appeared in my field of vision. A young woman with kind eyes and purple scrubs. "Welcome back, Mrs. Brennan," she said softly, smiling with genuine relief. "You gave us quite a scare." I tried to speak. Couldn't. The tube was still in my throat. Panic surged. It's okay, the nurse said quickly, reading my fear. "Let me get the doctor. We're going to remove that tube. You're safe." The next hour was a blur of doctors and procedures. They removed the breathing tube, which was horrible, and checked my vital signs. Asked me questions. Tested my responses. My right side felt heavy and wrong. Like it belonged to someone else. When I tried to move my right arm, it barely responded. My right leg was the same. Dead weight. When I tried to speak, my words came out slurred and garbled. My mouth couldn't form the shapes my brain was commanding. It was like being trapped inside a body that didn't work right anymore. Dr. Patel came in shortly after. She explained everything in careful, simple terms. Stroke. Emergency surgery. Medically induced coma. I'd coded twice, her exact word, coded, which I understood meant my heart had stopped. "You're very lucky to be alive," she said. "The damage could have been much worse." Lucky. That word again. She explained what came next. Physical therapy. Speech therapy. Occupational therapy. Cognitive rest. No stress. No driving for at least 6 weeks. Recovery would be slow, she warned. Months possibly. Maybe longer. I listened to all of this with a strange sense of detachment. Like she was talking about someone else's life. Someone else's broken body. Someone else's ruined plans. Then I thought of work. My clients. The Victorian conversion. The deals I had in progress. My phone. Where was my phone? I looked around frantically with my working left side. Saw it on the bedside table. Reached for it with my left hand, my right still useless, and managed to grab it. The screen lit up with notifications. Emails. Texts. Missed calls. And one message that made my blood run cold despite the warmth of the hospital room. From Caleb. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Where are you?" Not, "The hospital called and I'm on my way." Just a screenshot. Our joint bank account. The one where all my commissions went. The one I'd built over 15 years of brutal work. Balance. $0. Below it, one sentence. "I deserve this after everything I've done for you." I stared at that screen, my still foggy brain struggling to process what I was seeing. $73,612. Gone. Every penny. Every commission. Every sacrifice. Erased. He'd done it while I was unconscious. While I was dying. While doctors were shocking my heart back to life. My husband had robbed me. Not in anger during a fight. Not after some betrayal on my part. But while I lay helpless in a hospital bed, unable to defend myself or even know what was happening. The betrayal was so cold. So calculated. So perfectly timed to my moment of maximum weakness. I should have cried. Should have screamed. Should have thrown the phone across the room. Instead, I felt something else. Something cold and sharp clicking into place deep inside me. My left hand was trembling as I pulled up the keyboard. Typed one character. Hit send. A thumbs up emoji. That was all. No words. No questions. No accusations. Just that one little symbol. Caleb probably thought it meant I was too weak to fight. Too damaged to care. Maybe even too brain injured to understand what he'd done. He thought wrong. That thumbs up wasn't acceptance. It wasn't surrender. It was a declaration. War had just been declared. And I was going to win. I stared at that thumbs up emoji on my phone screen for a long time after I sent it. Watched the little delivered notification appear underneath. Then read. Caleb was seeing it right now. Probably confused. Maybe relieved. Definitely not understanding what it actually meant. Good. A nurse came in to check my vitals. Asked how I was feeling. I told her fine, which was a lie. My head pounded. My right side felt like dead weight. Every word I spoke came out slightly wrong, my mouth struggling to form sounds my brain commanded. But I was alive. And I was planning. The next 2 days in the hospital passed in a haze of physical therapy sessions, speech exercises, and doctor consultations. They had me squeeze stress balls with my weak right hand. Practice walking with a cane. Repeat simple phrases until my words came out clearer. I cooperated with everything. Smiled at the nurses. Thanked the doctors. Pretended to be a grateful patient focused on recovery. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. Running through finances. Replaying conversations. Building a strategy. On the morning of my discharge, Dr. Patel came in with a clipboard and a concerned expression. "Mrs. Brennan, you're making remarkable progress," she said. "But I need you to understand how serious this is. You had a major stroke. Your brain needs time to heal. That means rest. No stress. No work for at least 6 weeks." "I understand," I said, my words still slightly slurred but functional. "You'll need someone at home to help you," she continued. "At least for the first week or two. Simple tasks are going to be challenging. Cooking, cleaning, even getting dressed. Is your husband able to take time off work to care for you?" Something cold settled in my chest. "Yes," I lied. "He's already arranged it." Dr. Patel smiled with relief. "Good. That's important. You shouldn't be alone." She handed me a stack of discharge papers and prescriptions. "These are your medications. Anti-clotting agents, blood pressure management. Take them exactly as prescribed. And this," she handed me a card, "is information about support groups for stroke survivors. I highly recommend attending once you're feeling stronger." I took everything with my left hand, my right still too weak to be useful. "Thank you. Someone picking you up?" "My husband," I said smoothly. "He should be here soon." Another lie. Easier than the first. Dr. Patel left. A nurse brought me my clothes. The ones I'd been wearing during the property showing, now cleaned and folded. Getting dressed was humiliating. I couldn't button my shirt with one working hand. Couldn't tie my shoes. The nurse helped without comment, professional and kind. They brought me a cane. Standard issue hospital cane, aluminum with a rubber grip. I hated it immediately. Hated what it represented. But I needed it. My right leg wasn't strong enough to support my full weight yet. "Your husband here?" the nurse asked, checking her watch. "He's just parking," I said. "I'll meet him downstairs." She looked uncertain but nodded. "Hey. Take care of yourself, Mrs. Brennan." The moment she left, I grabbed my phone with my left hand and called the one person I trusted completely. Riley picked up on the second ring. "Ella. I need a favor," I said quietly, watching the door. "Anything." No hesitation. "That's Riley. I need a place to stay. And I need you not to tell Caleb I'm out." Silence. Then, "He doesn't know you're being discharged?" "Oh, he knows I survived," I said, my voice flat. "He just doesn't know I'm not coming home." Another pause. When Riley spoke again, her voice had changed. Colder. Sharper. "What did he do?" "Cleaned out our savings while I was unconscious. 73,000. I heard her inhale sharply. Then, "I'm on my way. 20 minutes. Where should I pick you up?" "Side entrance. Near the emergency department." "I'll be there in 15. She hung up. I gathered my things, phone, wallet, the discharge papers, and made my way slowly down the hallway with my cane. Each step was an effort. My right leg dragged slightly. I had to focus on every movement. The hospital was busy. Visitors coming and going. Staff rushing between rooms. Nobody paid attention to one more patient leaving. I took the elevator down to the ground floor and found my way to the side entrance Riley had mentioned. Sat on a bench and waited, my cane propped beside me. 13 minutes later, Riley's black Subaru pulled up. He got out quickly, came around to help me. My sister is 3 years older than me. Looks it too, sharp features, gray threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes from years of reading contracts. She's a tax attorney. Brilliant. Ruthless when she needs to be. Divorced twice, both times on her terms. She understands betrayal intimately. Riley looked at me, really looked, and I saw her face tighten with barely controlled fury. But she didn't say anything. Just helped me into the passenger seat, loaded my things in the back and got behind the wheel. We didn't speak until we were out of the hospital parking lot and on the road. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The property showing. The stroke. The surgery. Waking up to that text message. The empty account. The thumbs up emoji I'd sent. Riley didn't interrupt. Didn't gasp or curse or ask clarifying questions. Just listened with the absolute focus of someone cataloging evidence for a case. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very calmly, "We're going to destroy him." Not, "Are you sure?" Not, "Maybe there's an explanation." Not, "Let's think about this." Just, "We're going to destroy him." I felt something unknot in my chest. "Yeah," I said. "We are." Riley's apartment is in Northwest Portland, a second-floor unit in a converted industrial building. Exposed brick, high ceilings, minimalist furniture. She helped me up the stairs, humiliating, needing help with stairs, and got me settled in her guest room. Plain walls. Queen bed. Desk in the corner. Nothing fancy, but it was clean and quiet and safe. "Rest," Riley said. "I need to make some calls." I lay down on the bed, exhausted from the short journey. My body was weak in ways I'd never experienced. Simple movements required concentration. But my mind was sharp. Clearer than it had been in months. Maybe years. I stared at the ceiling and replayed 12 years of marriage. Looked for the signs I'd missed. The patterns I'd ignored. Caleb's sudden interest in our finances 3 years ago. How he'd started asking questions about my accounts, my investments, my retirement funds. I'd thought he was finally taking an interest in our future. Now I saw it differently. He'd been mapping territory. Figuring out what was accessible and what wasn't. His insistence that I add him to my investment accounts, in case something happens. For security, he'd said. So he could handle things if I was ever incapacitated. I'd refused. Those accounts were mine. Built before marriage. Kept separate intentionally. He'd seemed hurt but dropped it. Now I understood. That had been a test. Seeing how far he could push. And 6 months ago, his suggestion that we refinance my condo. Free up equity for renovations, he'd said. The kitchen needed updating. The bathroom could use work. I'd said no. The condo was mine. Bought before we married. Paid for with my money. I wasn't refinancing it. He'd gotten angry. Said I didn't trust him. That I treated our marriage like a business transaction instead of a partnership. We'd fought. He'd sulked for days. Eventually I'd apologize just to end the tension. Now I saw that too for what it was. Another test. Another boundary check. He'd been planning this. Maybe for months. Maybe longer. And the moment I collapsed during that property showing, the moment I became vulnerable and helpless, he'd executed his plan. That first night at Riley's I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My body was exhausted but my mind wouldn't stop. I lay in that guest bed using my left hand to scroll through old text messages, old emails, looking for evidence of what I'd missed. Riley came in around midnight with chamomile tea. You should sleep, she said. Can't. She sat on the edge of the bed. Tomorrow we start building your case. But tonight you need rest. He's been planning this, I said. For months. Maybe years. I keep thinking, how did I not see it? Because you trusted him, Riley said simply. That's not a character flaw, Ella. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. I was an idiot. No. He was a thief. There's a difference. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Another text from Caleb. Where are you? The hospital said you were discharged. I showed Riley. She read it and shook her head. Don't respond, she said. Let him panic. Another buzz. Oh, I'm worried. Please call me. Then another. This is ridiculous. We need to talk about this. I watched them accumulate. Watched his tone shift from confused to concerned to frustrated. He doesn't know where I am, I said. Good. Keep it that way. Another text. You can't just disappear. I have rights too. Riley read that one and actually laughed. Cold and sharp. Rights. He stole $73,000 while you were dying and he's talking about rights. She stood up. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we figure out exactly how much damage he's done. Then we figure out how to return the favor. She left, closing the door quietly behind her. I lay there in the dark, my phone buzzing periodically with new messages from Caleb that I didn't read. For the first time since the stroke, I felt something other than fear or pain or exhaustion. I felt focused. Caleb had taken advantage of my vulnerability. Thought I'd be too weak or too damaged or too grateful to be alive to fight back. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The next morning, Riley left early for her office. Said she had some calls to make, some favors to collect. I spent the morning doing the physical therapy exercises the hospital had given me, squeezing a stress ball with my weak right hand, practicing balance by standing on one foot, walking the length of Riley's apartment with my cane, trying to build strength back into my right leg. Every movement was exhausting. Every small task a reminder of what the stroke had taken from me. But I kept going. Because if I was going to fight Caleb, I needed to be strong enough to do it. Around noon, I heard Riley's key in the lock. She came through the door carrying a banker's box, the kind offices use for storing files. It looked ordinary enough, but something about the way she was holding it made my stomach tighten. You're not going to like this, she said, setting the box on the dining table between us. I sat down slowly, my right leg still unsteady. Show me. Riley opened the box and started pulling out papers. Bank statements. Credit reports. Transaction histories. Business filings. Page after page of financial documents printed on standard office paper. I called in some favors, Riley said, spreading everything out methodically. Tax attorneys have connections at banks, credit bureaus, business registration offices. I pulled everything I could find with Caleb's name on it. She arranged the papers into separate piles, creating a timeline. I watched her work with that precise attorney focus, organizing chaos into evidence. This, she said, tapping a document, is a business account opened 14 months ago. Brennan Creative Studios. Listed owners are Caleb Brennan and Ella Brennan. I leaned forward, reading the paperwork. I never signed this. I know. That's fraud. He opened it using your information without consent. Riley pulled out a highlighter and marked several lines. And look at these transactions. I followed her finger across the page. Transfers from an account I recognized, our joint savings, the one he'd eventually emptied, into this business account. Small amounts. 3,000 here. 5,000 there. Never more than 9,000 at once. Always under 10,000, I said slowly. Exactly. Banks have to report transactions over $10,000 to federal authorities. He knew that. He was being careful. Staying just under the reporting threshold. Riley pulled out more statements, all marked with similar highlighted transactions. This has been going on for over a year. My hands started shaking. How much total? Riley met my eyes. From what I can track. Almost $89,000. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table with my left hand to steady myself. 89,000. On top of the 73 he'd stolen while I was unconscious. Over $160,000 total. He's been planning this for over a year, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. At least. Probably longer. Riley pulled out another document. It gets worse. I almost laughed. How could it possibly get worse? She handed me a paper I recognized immediately. A power of attorney form. The one I'd signed last year after the ovarian cyst scare, when I was afraid I might need emergency surgery. Except this wasn't the version I remembered. This has been amended, Riley said quietly. See here. Financial authority. Investment accounts. Real estate decisions. The version you signed was medical only. This one gives him control over everything. I stared at my signature at the bottom of the page. Looked right. The loops and curves matched my handwriting perfectly. I didn't sign this version, I said. I know. I compared it to documents I personally witnessed you sign. Contracts from when I helped you buy that investment property 3 years ago. It's a forgery. A really good one, but still a forgery. Riley spread out more papers. Bank statements from my investment portfolio. A line of credit I'd never authorized. He used that forged POA to take out $70,000 against your investments, she explained. Cash withdrawals over the past 6 months. Small amounts like everything else. Always staying under the radar. I felt sick. Physically sick. My stomach churned and my head pounded, and for a moment I thought I might actually throw up right there at Riley's dining table. He practiced my signature, I said. The realization was somehow worse than everything else. He sat somewhere, maybe in our apartment while I was at work, and practiced writing my name until he could do it perfectly. Yes. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't panic when I had the stroke. He's been systematically robbing me for over a year. Yes. I looked at all the papers spread across the table. The evidence of months of planning. The careful amounts always just under reporting thresholds. The forged documents. The fake business account. Every "I love you" had been a lie. Every dinner he made while I worked late. Every supportive comment about my career. All of it performance. Theater. A distraction while he plotted my financial destruction. What do we do with this? I asked. Riley started gathering the papers back into organized piles. First we make copies. Multiple copies. Then we take it to a lawyer. A good one who specializes in financial fraud and family law. And we bury him. My phone buzzed. Another text from Caleb. I'd been ignoring them for 3 days now. They kept coming. "Elle, please. We need to talk." I didn't even look at it. Just turned the phone face down on the table. "Let me see those," Riley said, gesturing to my phone. I unlocked it and handed it over. She scrolled through the messages Caleb had been sending, her expression getting colder with each one. "He's panicking," she said. "Good. Let him panic." She handed the phone back. "Don't respond. Not yet. Let him wonder where you are, what you know, what you're planning." That afternoon, while Riley was photocopying everything at her office, I sat in her guest room and let myself feel it. The betrayal. The violation. The cold calculation of what Caleb had done. He'd married me knowing I made good money. Positioned himself as supportive husband while I built my career. Then spent years systematically stealing from me, forging my signature, creating fake accounts in my name. And the moment I became vulnerable, the moment I collapsed and ended up in a hospital fighting for my life, he'd grabbed everything he could and run. He'd literally bet on me dying or being too brain damaged to fight back. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Caleb. Sophie. My former assistant. Saw Caleb at Stumptown this morning. He was with a woman. Very cozy. Thought you should know. I stared at that message for a long moment. Part of me didn't want to know. Didn't want confirmation of what I already suspected. But I needed to see. Can you send a picture if you see them again? I typed back. Sophie responded immediately. Already took one. Sending now. The image loaded slowly. When it finally appeared, I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Caleb sat in a coffee shop booth across from a young woman. Brunette, mid-20s, pretty in that natural Portland way. His hand rested on her thigh. She was laughing, leaning forward, completely comfortable with his touch. The intimacy was unmistakable. I didn't recognize her. Forwarded the photo to Riley without comment. Her response came within minutes. Running reverse image search. Give me an hour. I lay back on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. The image burned into my mind. Of course there was another woman. Of course. That's what this was really about. Not just money. Not just theft. But an exit strategy. A new life with someone younger, funded entirely by my work. 90 minutes later, Riley called me into her home office. She had her laptop open, a full profile displayed on the screen. Vanessa Pruitt, Riley said. 26 years old. Works as a gallery coordinator at Atelier Northwest. The name clicked. That's where Caleb had his last gallery showing. 8 months ago. Exactly. Riley pulled up more information. Social media profiles. Employment history. And then something that made my blood run cold. Venmo transactions. He's been paying her rent, Riley said quietly. $1,500 a month for the past 9 months. Look at the memo lines. Rent. Apartment. He wasn't even trying to hide it. With my money, I said. With your money. Riley pulled up Vanessa's Instagram. Public profile. Hundreds of photos documenting the life of a 20-something in Portland. Coffee shops. Art galleries. Hiking trails. Wine bars. And in the background of those photos, if you looked carefully, was Caleb. A figure barely visible in a shot from Mount Tabor 3 months ago. A reflection in a mirror during a gallery opening. A man's hand, wearing that distinctive turquoise ring Caleb always wore, holding a wine glass at a restaurant. They'd been hiding in plain sight. Documenting their relationship for anyone who bothered to look closely enough. Riley scrolled further. Weekend trips to Cannon Beach. Seattle. A long weekend in San Francisco 6 weeks ago. Right when Caleb had told me he was going on an inspiration retreat alone. Then Riley stopped on one particular photo. Posted 2 weeks ago. Vanessa holding up a set of keys, huge smile on her face, caption reading, New chapter. Downtown loft, here I come. The location tag showed a luxury building in the Pearl District. I clicked through to the building's website. Studios starting at $2,800. 1 bedrooms at $3,400. Gallery coordinators don't make that kind of money, Riley said. No, I agreed. They don't. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us understanding what this meant. He was planning to leave you, Riley said finally. Take the money, move in with her, start fresh. The stroke interrupted his timeline, I said, the pieces finally clicking into place. When I collapsed, he panicked. Thought I might die or be permanently disabled. So he grabbed everything he could while I was unconscious. But you survived. But I survived, I repeated. And now he's stuck. Can't move forward with Vanessa without money. Can't explain where the money went. Can't find me to manipulate me into forgiving him. Riley turned to look at me. What do you want to do? I looked at the evidence spread across her desk. The bank statements. The forged documents. The photos of Caleb and Vanessa together. A year of planning. A year of lies. A year of theft. I want him to regret every single thing he took from me, I said. Riley smiled. Cold and sharp and full of promise. Then let's get started. Riley made the call the next morning while I was doing my physical therapy exercises in her living room. I heard her voice from her office, professional and clipped, asking someone for a reference, a recommendation, someone who specialized in financial fraud within family law. When she came out, she had a name written on a post-it note. Martin Okoye, she said. Family law attorney. Has a reputation for going after financial abusers. Doesn't lose often. When can we meet him? Tomorrow. He's making room in his schedule. Martin's office was in a modest building downtown, nothing fancy. No marble lobby or designer furniture. Just a functional space with dated carpet and fluorescent lighting. I appreciated that. Meant he spent money on actual legal work instead of impressing clients. The receptionist led us to a small conference room. Martin came in 2 minutes later. Late 40s, Nigerian accent still present despite probably decades in the US. Built solid like someone who'd played college football and stayed in shape. He shook my hand firmly, then Riley's. Didn't comment on my cane or the way my right hand trembled slightly. Just got straight to business. Mrs. Brennan, he said, sitting across from us with the folder Riley had sent ahead. I've reviewed the preliminary documents your sister provided. Before we go further, I need to understand what you want out of this. Everything, I said simply. I want everything he took. And I want him to face consequences. Martin nodded, opening the folder. Your husband committed several felonies. Identity fraud. Opening accounts in your name without authorization. Forgery, that amended power of attorney. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult during a medical crisis. The dollar amounts involved make this serious. We can pursue criminal charges in addition to divorce proceedings. What happens if we do both at once? I asked. Gets complicated. Criminal charges can actually slow down the divorce. Defense attorneys will advise their clients not to cooperate with discovery, not to provide financial documents, plead the fifth. Makes it harder to get your assets back quickly. I thought about that. So divorce first. Get my money back. Then criminal charges. Martin raised an eyebrow. Most people want the criminal case first. Want to see justice done. I want my life back first, I said. Justice can wait a few months. Riley smiled beside me. He understood. Martin studied me for a moment. Then he smiled too. Mrs. Brennan, I think we're going to work very well together. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Martin took notes in a leather portfolio, asking sharp questions, circling back to details that seemed minor but apparently weren't. The timing matters, he explained. The fact that he emptied the joint account while you were unconscious. That's not just morally reprehensible, it's legally significant. Financial exploitation during medical incapacity. Judges take that very seriously. Good, I said. The forged power of attorney is another major piece. That's identity fraud. Using it to access your investment accounts makes it wire fraud if any transactions cross state lines, which I'm betting they did. Riley pulled out more documents. These are the transactions from the business account he opened in her name. Brennan Creative Studios. Almost 90,000 transferred over 14 months. Martin whistled low. Always under 10,000 at a time. He knew about reporting thresholds. This was planned. That's what we thought, Riley said. Martin looked at me. How much do you know about his current financial situation? Not much. He's been texting me but I haven't responded. Good. Keep it that way. All communication goes through me from now on. He made another note. We'll file this week. Request full financial disclosure from him, freeze on all joint assets and temporary exclusive use of the marital residence. It's not marital, I said. I bought it before we married. It's only in my name. Even better. Makes that part simple. Martin closed the folder. One more thing. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because it will. When we file with all this evidence, when we request criminal investigation, he's going to fight back. Hard. I thought about that text message. That screenshot of the empty account. The thumbs up emoji I'd sent. Let him fight, I said. I'm ready. We filed for divorce 3 days later. Martin submitted a petition citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full return of all fraudulently obtained funds, plus sole possession of my apartment. Attached were copies of everything. Bank statements, the forged POA, the business account he'd opened in my name, transaction histories showing systematic theft over 14 months. It was thorough. Damning. Irrefutable. Caleb had 5 days to respond. His answer came through a lawyer named Doug Finch, whose office was in a strip mall next to a tax preparation service and a nail salon. Riley looked him up, specialized in DUIs and small claims disputes. Not exactly equipped for complex financial fraud cases. Doug's response was almost laughable. He filed a counterpetition requesting a 50-50 split of all assets, including my apartment and investment accounts. The justification: Caleb had contributed equally to the marriage as household manager and emotional support provider. Martin showed me the filing in his office. Actually laughed when he read that part aloud. He stole over $160,000 and his lawyer is claiming homemaker equity, Martin said. This won't work, but it'll drag the process out while they scramble for a better strategy. How long? I asked. Couple months probably. Discovery, depositions, financial disclosures. Maybe a settlement conference before we get to actual trial. Good, I said. Let it drag. Martin looked confused. Most clients want this over quickly. I want him to make mistakes, I said. Desperate people do stupid things. Understanding dawned on Martin's face. You want to see what else he's hiding. Exactly. While the legal machinery ground forward, Riley was working another angle. She'd been tracking Caleb's digital footprint, social media, tagged locations, Venmo transactions, building a complete picture of his double life. One evening she came home with her laptop and a grim expression. Found something else, she said, pulling up a bank statement I didn't recognize. Personal checking account at a bank I'd never used. Caleb's name only. Opened 18 months ago. Current balance, $31,847. Where did this come from? I asked. Riley highlighted transactions. Small transfers from the business account. Cash deposits. And look at the timing. He pulled up my commission records from work. Lined them up next to Caleb's deposit history. The pattern was obvious. Every time I closed a major deal, every time a big commission hit our joint account, Caleb would move money. First to the fraudulent business account, then in smaller chunks to this secret personal account. Building his escape fund. Dollar by dollar. My dollars. He's been planning this since before he opened the business account, I said slowly. At least 18 months. Probably longer. This was always the plan. Steal enough, move it somewhere you couldn't track it, then leave. Riley scrolled through more transactions. Regular payments to Vanessa. Payments to a moving company 2 weeks before my stroke. Even a deposit that lined up exactly with my biggest commission of the year. A waterfront development deal I'd closed 3 months ago. I'd worked 12-hour days for 6 weeks to close that deal. Celebrated with Caleb over dinner when the commission finally came through. He'd seemed genuinely happy for me. And 2 days later he'd transferred $15,000 of it to his secret account. We need to freeze this too, I said. Martin filed an emergency motion the next morning. Requested the court freeze all accounts connected to either party pending full financial investigation. Provided evidence of the hidden account, the systematic transfers, the pattern of theft. The judge granted it that afternoon. Every account with Caleb's name was locked. He couldn't access the money he'd stolen. Couldn't withdraw cash. Couldn't pay bills. Couldn't finance his new life with Vanessa. I found out how completely trapped he was 2 days later when Sophie texted me. Just saw Caleb at Fred Meyer. His card got declined at checkout. He looked like he was going to cry. I showed Riley. She confirmed it through one of her banking contacts. Every account was frozen solid. No access. No exceptions. My phone started buzzing almost immediately after that. Caleb's text had been sporadic before. Now they came in waves. Oh, this is insane. I can't even buy groceries. We need to look. This is affecting both of us. You're destroying everything out of spite. I made a mistake, but this is cruel. I saved every message. Didn't respond to any of them. Then Riley's phone rang. Unknown number. She put it on speaker. Hello. Riley answered. Is this Riley Brennan? A young woman's voice. Shaking. Verging on tears. Who's asking? My name is Vanessa. I don't know who else to call. Caleb said you're his wife's sister. Please, I need help. Riley's expression went cold. I'm listening. Caleb told me his accounts got frozen because of his wife. He can't pay my rent. I'm going to get evicted. I didn't know he said they were separated. He said the divorce was almost final. I didn't know he was stealing from her. The desperation in her voice was real. He probably really didn't know. Probably believed every lie Caleb told her. Vanessa, Riley said, her voice like ice. Caleb is a liar and a thief. Whatever he told you about his marriage, about being separated, about his wife being cruel. All fiction. He stole over $160,000 from my sister while she was unconscious in a hospital bed. Use that money to pay your rent, buy you things, plan a future with you. Silence on the other end. If you're smart, Riley continued, you'll distance yourself from him immediately. Before you become an accessory to fraud. Before your name ends up in legal documents as a co-conspirator. Do you understand? I didn't know, Vanessa whispered. I swear I didn't know. Then get away from him. No. Before this gets worse. Riley hung up. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I started laughing. Couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and cold but felt good. He can't pay her rent, I said. He's trapped. No money. No escape. No girlfriend. And it's only going to get worse, Riley said. Wait until discovery starts. Wait until he has to produce every financial document, explain every transaction, justify every lie. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Caleb. Please, Ella. Just talk to me. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I turned the phone face down without reading the rest. He's panicking, I said. Good, Riley replied. Let him panic. Let him scramble. Let him realize exactly how badly he messed up. For the first time since the stroke, since waking up to that empty account and that cold text message, I felt something close to satisfaction. Caleb had taken advantage of my vulnerability. Thought I'd be too weak or too damaged or too grateful to be alive to fight back. He was learning exactly how wrong he'd been. And we were just getting started. 6 weeks after the stroke, we had our first major court hearing. By then I'd regained most of my physical strength. My speech was back to normal. No more slurring, no more struggling to find words. The tremor in my right hand only showed up when I was exhausted. I could walk without the cane if I concentrated, but Martin had been clear about strategy. Bring the cane, he'd said during our prep session the day before. You don't have to lean on it but carry it. Visual reminder of what happened to you. Of what he did while you were vulnerable. I understood. This wasn't just about facts and documents. It was about optics. About making sure the judge saw me as a victim who'd fought back, not just another angry spouse in a contentious divorce. That morning I stood in front of Riley's bathroom mirror and dressed carefully. Navy blue suit. The same one I'd worn to close a $2 million waterfront development deal the year before. Back then it had been armor against difficult clients and tough negotiations. Now it was armor against my husband. I pulled my hair back in a neat bun. Minimal makeup. Small pearl earrings my mother had given me years ago. Professional. Put together. Sympathetic but strong. Riley appeared in the doorway behind me, already dressed in her own court-appropriate outfit. Gray pantsuit, sensible heels. You look good, she said. I look like I'm going into battle. You are. We drove to the courthouse in silence. Portland morning traffic was its usual mess. Rain-slicked streets, brake lights, the smell of coffee from a drive-thru on every corner. Riley kept glancing at me like she wanted to say something encouraging but couldn't find the right words. In the parking garage she finally spoke. You ready? I picked up my cane from the back seat. Let's end this. The courthouse was downtown, an older building with marble floors and high ceilings that made every sound echo. We went through security, found the right courtroom and sat on a bench outside to wait. Martin showed up 10 minutes later, briefcase in hand, looking calm and professional. Judge Torres is fair, he said, sitting beside us. Doesn't tolerate games. Doesn't like people who take advantage of vulnerable spouses. This should go well. Should, I repeated. Will, Martin corrected. The evidence is overwhelming. But let me do the talking. Answer questions directly if the judge asks you something, but don't volunteer information. And whatever you do, don't react to anything Caleb or his lawyer says. I nodded. At exactly 10 a.m. the bailiff called us in. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Maybe 30 feet across, with wooden benches that looked like church pews and fluorescent lighting that made everything feel stark and official. Judge Angela Torres was already at the bench. A woman in her 50s with short gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up as we entered, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. Caleb was already there, sitting at the opposite table with Doug Finch. He looked terrible. Like he hadn't slept in days. Wearing jeans and a blazer that didn't quite match, his hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. He looked at me when I walked in. I didn't look back. Just walked to our table with my cane clicking on the floor, sat down and kept my eyes forward. Judge Torres shuffled papers for a moment. Then she spoke. This is a hearing regarding the petition for divorce filed by Ella Brennan against Caleb Brennan, with motions for asset freeze, exclusive possession of marital residence, and return of fraudulently obtained funds. She looked up. I've reviewed the filings from both parties. Mr. Finch, your client withdrew $73,612 from joint accounts while Mrs. Brennan was hospitalized for a life-threatening stroke. Is that correct? Doug Finch stood. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, wearing a suit that looked off the rack and slightly too big. Your Honor, my client exercised his legal right to access jointly held funds. Furthermore, Mrs. Brennan had exhibited financially controlling behavior throughout the marriage, and my client was acting to protect himself from potential. Protect himself from what, exactly? Judge Torres interrupted. From a woman having a stroke? Doug stammered. From potential abandonment, Your Honor. Mrs. Brennan had recently refused to refinance their marital home, which my client interpreted as preparation for divorce. Their home. Martin stood smoothly. Your Honor, if I may. The property in question is not a marital asset. Mrs. Brennan purchased that condominium before the marriage, has paid the mortgage exclusively from premarital accounts, and Mr. Brennan has no legal claim to it whatsoever. Judge Torres turned her attention to Caleb. Mr. Brennan, were you aware your wife was in the hospital when you withdrew these funds? Caleb whispered something to Doug. Doug leaned down, listened, then straightened. Yes, Your Honor, but my client was under extreme emotional stress. I didn't ask about his emotional state, Judge Torres said. I asked if he knew she was in the hospital. She looked directly at Caleb. Mr. Brennan, answer the question yourself, please. Caleb stood slowly. Yes, Your Honor. Did you visit your wife in the hospital? Silence. Judge Torres repeated the question, slower this time. Mr. Brennan, did you visit your wife while she was hospitalized for a stroke that nearly killed her? No, Your Honor. But you did access her bank accounts during that time? Yes. Judge Torres removed her glasses and set them on the bench. Looked at Caleb with an expression that could only be described as contempt. Let me make sure I understand the timeline here. Your wife of 12 years collapsed during a property showing. Was airlifted to the hospital. Underwent emergency brain surgery. Was placed in a medically induced coma. And during this time you didn't visit her. Didn't check on her condition. But you did withdraw over $70,000 from your joint accounts while she was unconscious and unable to consent or even be aware of the transaction. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact that sounded damning when said out loud in a courtroom. Your Honor, if I may, Doug tried to interject. Judge Torres held up her hand. You may not. I'm still trying to understand how your client's attorney expects me to believe this was anything other than financial exploitation of a medically vulnerable spouse. She put her glasses back on and looked at the documents in front of her. I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all accounts connected to either party pending further investigation and discovery. This includes the joint savings account, the business account opened in Mrs. Brennan's name without her authorization, and any personal accounts held by Mr. Brennan. Doug started to object. Judge Torres cut him off with a look. Additionally, Mrs. Brennan is granted temporary exclusive possession of the marital residence. Mr. Brennan, you have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings. A police escort can be arranged if necessary. Your Honor, that's my client's home, Doug protested. No, counselor. It's Mrs. Brennan's home. She purchased it before the marriage. It's titled in her name only. Your client has been living there as a guest, essentially. That guest status is now revoked. Judge Torres made a note on her paperwork. Furthermore, I'm ordering full financial disclosure from both parties. Bank statements, investment accounts, credit cards, loan documents. Everything. I want a complete picture of the marital finances before we proceed. She looked at Caleb again. And Mr. Brennan, I strongly suggest you cooperate fully. Withdrawing tens of thousands of dollars while your spouse is medically incapacitated strikes me as unconscionable. Your client is fortunate I'm not recommending criminal charges at this time. She banged her gavel once. Next hearing in 30 days. Discovery to be completed before then. We're adjourned. Everyone stood as Judge Torres left through the door behind the bench. The moment she was gone, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Martin gathered his papers, looking satisfied. That went exactly as well as I'd hoped. Across the aisle, Doug was talking urgently to Caleb in a low voice. Caleb's face was pale, his hands shaking. As we filed out, he tried to catch my eye. Tried to approach. I walked past him without acknowledgement. My cane clicked on the marble floor. Riley walked beside me, her hand on my elbow, protective. Outside the courtroom, in the echoing hallway with its high ceilings and afternoon light coming through tall windows, Martin turned to us. Judge Torres clearly sees through his story, he said. The fact that he didn't visit you in the hospital but did access your bank accounts, that's damning. And the tone she used? She's already made up her mind about his character. What happens now? I asked. Discovery. We get access to everything, all his accounts, all his transactions, all his communications. And he has to provide it. If he refuses or hides anything, he's in contempt of court. Riley smiled. He's trapped. Completely, Martin agreed. He can't access the stolen money. Can't hide it. Can't move it. And in 30 days, we're back in front of Judge Torres with a complete financial picture. Then we negotiate settlement or proceed to trial. We walked out of the courthouse into gray Portland drizzle. Riley offered to drive me back to her place, but I shook my head. Can we go somewhere else? I asked. I don't want to go home yet. We ended up at a coffee shop near the waterfront. Sat in a corner booth with overpriced lattes and watched rain streak the windows. You did great in there, Riley said. Calm, composed, didn't react when Caleb tried to get your attention. Didn't feel great. What do you mean? I wrapped my hands around my coffee cup. We won. Judge gave us everything we asked for. But I feel empty. Martin had left after the hearing. Other clients, other cases, but Riley stayed. She looked at me with understanding. This is just the first step, she said gently. It's not supposed to feel like victory yet. Then what's it supposed to feel like? Progress. Movement. The beginning of getting your life back. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand. You're doing the right thing. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to feel confident in the path I'd chosen. The legal battle, the asset freeze, the systematic dismantling of Caleb's life. But sitting in that coffee shop watching rain and strangers pass by, I felt something else. Something uncomfortable. Doubt. Not about whether Caleb deserved this. He did. He'd stolen from me while I was dying. He'd planned it for over a year. He'd built a secret life with another woman using my money. But I kept thinking about the girl I'd been 15 years ago. The one who'd started in real estate with nothing but ambition and optimism. Who'd believed hard work mattered. Who'd thought love was enough. That girl felt like a stranger now. The stroke had changed me. The betrayal had changed me. I was harder now. Colder. More calculating. I wasn't sure I liked who I was becoming. But I also wasn't done yet. Let's go home, I said finally. Riley drove me back to her apartment. That night, I lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened in that courtroom. Caleb's face when the judge ordered the account freeze. His shaking hands. His desperate attempt to catch my eye as I left. Part of me, a small, stupid part, had wanted to feel sorry for him. I pushed that part down. Locked it away with everything else I didn't want to feel. This was justice. Not revenge. Justice. And I was going to see it through to the end. 2 weeks after the courthouse hearing, I was doing my morning physical therapy routine when Riley's phone rang. She answered in the kitchen. I heard her voice shift from casual to sharp in seconds. Are you sure? She said. Then, send me everything. I'll call you back. She came into the living room where I was doing balance exercises, holding her phone with an expression I recognized. She'd found something. Caleb just applied for a passport, she said. Expedited processing. 2-week turnaround. I stopped mid-exercise. He's planning to run. That's what I thought. So I did some digging. Riley pulled up her laptop, typed quickly. Remember that old tablet you both used for household stuff? Grocery lists, shared calendar. Yeah. It's still at the apartment. And it's still syncing to the cloud. Including Caleb's email. I sat down on the couch. What did you find? Riley turned the laptop so I could see. Email after email. Browser history. Search queries. Non-extradition countries. Mexico residency requirements. International wire transfers under $10,000. How to open offshore bank account. He's been planning this for at least a week, Riley said. Since the court hearing probably. Realized his accounts were frozen, realized he was trapped and started looking for an exit. With what money? I asked. Everything's frozen. Riley scrolled to another email. He's been talking to Vanessa about it. Look at this thread. I read the messages. Caleb telling Vanessa they'd leave the country together. Start fresh in Mexico. He just needed to access some money first. Just needed to convince the judge to release funds for living expenses. He thinks he can trick the court into unfreezing enough money to run, I said. Exactly. Riley closed the laptop. And I think we should let him try. I looked at her. What do you mean? I mean we give him rope. Let him think he's getting away with it. Then we catch him in the act. Understanding dawned slowly. You want to set a trap. I want to make him commit another crime. One so obvious, so documented, so impossible to deny that he can't talk his way out of it. Riley pulled out her phone, started texting. I'm calling Martin. We need to move fast. We met with Martin that afternoon at his office. Laid out the plan. We file a motion requesting limited release of funds, Martin explained. $10,000. Just enough to cover Caleb's basic living expenses while the divorce proceeds. Food, rent, necessities. The judge will probably grant it, I said. Seems reasonable. Exactly. And the moment that money hits Caleb's account, we track every transaction. If he moves it offshore, if he tries to hide it, if he does anything except use it for legitimate living expenses, we've got him for fraud, contempt of court, and probably a dozen other charges. Riley was already on her laptop. I can monitor his accounts in real time. The second money moves, we'll know. And if he actually runs? I asked. Then we alert the authorities. He becomes a fugitive. That's a whole different level of legal trouble. Martin leaned back in his chair. But I don't think he'll get that far. Men like Caleb aren't smart enough to disappear successfully. They make mistakes. We filed the motion the next day. Martin kept the language simple and reasonable, requesting minimal fund release for basic needs, emphasizing that Caleb had no access to money for food or rent. The judge granted it within 24 hours. $10,000. Released to Caleb's primary checking account. Conditional on being used only for necessary living expenses. The money hit his account on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m. Riley and I were sitting at her dining table, her laptop open between us, watching in real time. There it is, Riley said, pointing to the screen. 10,000. Just cleared. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. Then the first transaction appeared. Transfer. $10,000 from checking to Brennan Creative Studios business account. He moved it immediately, I said. He's trying to hide it from the court order, Riley replied. Thinks if it's in the business account it doesn't count. We kept watching. 5 minutes later, another transaction. Transfer. $10,000 from business account to personal account at different bank. There's the secret account, Riley said, taking screenshots. The one he opened 18 months ago. Then we waited again. Longer this time. Almost an hour. I was starting to think maybe Caleb was going to sit on the money, be cautious, not make any obvious mistakes. Then a new transaction appeared. And my breath caught. Wire transfer. $8,500 to Banco Internacional de Belize. Offshore account, Riley said quietly. That's international wire fraud. She immediately forwarded the screenshots to Martin. Called him. Put it on speaker. He just wired money to Belize, she said when Martin answered. How much? $8,500. Martin was quiet for a moment. That's a felony. Federal crime. I'm contacting the FBI. How fast can they move? Riley asked. Fast. Especially with evidence this clear. Give me 2 hours. He hung up. Riley and I sat in silence, staring at the laptop screen. He actually did it, I said. He actually thought he could get away with it. He's desperate. Desperate people make stupid decisions. Riley kept monitoring. Over the next hour, more transactions appeared. Caleb had booked flights, 2 tickets to Cabo San Lucas, departing in 3 days. Hotel reservation at a beachfront resort. Even a rental car. He's planning to run, Riley said. Get to Mexico, then somehow access the offshore account from there. Will he be able to? Probably not. These things are complicated. But he doesn't know that. He's panicking and grabbing at anything that looks like escape. Martin called back 2 hours later. FBI is involved. They've issued a warrant. They're going to arrest him at the airport before he boards. When? I asked. His flight is Saturday morning at noon. They'll take him at the gate. I want to be there, I said suddenly. Riley looked at me. You sure? I need to see it. Need to see him realize he's actually trapped. Martin hesitated on the phone. It's not standard, but you're not interfering. Just watching. I don't see why not. Saturday morning, Riley and I drove to PDX Airport. Parked in the garage with a view of the departure terminal entrance. We sat in her car drinking coffee from a drive-thru, watching travelers come and go with their luggage and their normal lives. At 11:47 a.m. I saw them. Caleb and Vanessa walking through the automatic doors. Each pulling a suitcase. Vanessa looked excited. Young, pretty, dressed for vacation in a sundress and sandals despite it being December. She was laughing at something Caleb said. Caleb looked nervous. Kept scanning the crowd. Like he sensed something wrong but couldn't identify what. Then I saw the agents. 2 men in dark suits walking with purpose through the terminal. Professional. Efficient. Moving straight toward Caleb and Vanessa. They approached. Showed badges. I couldn't hear what they said from the car, but I saw Caleb's face change. Saw the color drain from his skin. Saw his mouth open in protest or excuse or denial. Vanessa looked confused. Started asking questions, her voice rising. One of the agents said something to her. She stepped back. They handcuffed Caleb right there in the middle of the departure terminal. Travelers stopped and stared. Some pulled out phones to record. A small crowd formed. Vanessa was crying now. Full sobbing. Asking Caleb what was happening, what he'd done, why he'd lied to her. The agents led Caleb toward an exit. He was saying something. Probably trying to explain, to justify, to make this seem like a misunderstanding. Vanessa collapsed onto a nearby bench, face in her hands, shoulders shaking. I watched all of this from Riley's car with a strange sense of detachment. Like I was watching a movie instead of the destruction of my husband's life. You okay? Riley asked quietly. I don't know, I said honestly. We sat there for another few minutes. Watched Vanessa eventually pull herself together and walk back out of the terminal, dragging her suitcase behind her, mascara streaked down her face. Then Riley started the car. Let's go home. We drove back to her apartment in silence. I kept replaying the moment Caleb's face changed. The moment he realized he'd been caught. That evening my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello. Is this Ella? A woman's voice. Young. Thick with tears. Vanessa. This is she. I didn't know. The words came out in a rush, desperate and pleading. I swear to God I didn't know he was stealing from you. He told me you were separated. That the divorce was almost final. That you'd been controlling and cruel for years. I never would have. She broke down crying. I sat on Riley's couch, phone pressed to my ear, listening to this 26-year-old girl sob. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. She'd believed a liar. Trusted the wrong person. Made bad choices based on incomplete information. But another part, the part that had been forged in betrayal and nearly dying in a hospital bed, felt nothing but cold clarity. Vanessa, I said quietly. Did Caleb ever pay for anything himself? Dinners, trips, your rent. Silence. Then small. No. He said his money was tied up in art investments. That it would be liquid soon. It was my money, I said. All of it. Every dinner you ate. Every trip you took. Every month of rent he paid for your apartment. That was money he stole from me while I was working 80-hour weeks to support him. While I was having a stroke and nearly dying. More crying. I'm so sorry, Vanessa whispered. I didn't know. What do I do now? I thought about that. What was the right answer? What did someone in her position need to hear? You move on, I said finally. You find someone honest. You learn from this. And you never, ever trust someone who badmouths their spouse to justify why they're starting something with you. That's always a red flag. I feel so stupid. You were lied to. That's not the same as being stupid. She was quiet for a moment. Are you going to press charges against me? The FBI agent said I might be in trouble too. Did you know about the fraud? The stolen money? The offshore accounts? No. I swear I didn't. Then you're probably fine. But distance yourself from Caleb. Immediately. Don't take his calls. Don't visit him. Don't try to help him. He'll drag you down with him if you let him. Okay, she said, voice small. Thank you. I don't deserve. I hung up before she could finish. Set the phone down on Riley's coffee table and stared at it. Riley came out of her bedroom. That was her. Yeah. What did she say? That she didn't know. That he lied to her. That she's sorry. Do you believe her? I thought about it. Yeah. I do. She's just a kid who made bad choices. Riley sat beside me. You were kind to her. Was I? I wasn't sure. The conversation had felt cold. Distant. Like talking to someone through glass. Kinder than I would have been, Riley said. We sat in silence for a while. Then Riley turned on the TV, some mindless cooking show, and we watched without really watching. My phone buzzed once more that night. A text from Martin. Caleb's been charged. Federal custody. Bail hearing Monday. You don't need to attend if you don't want to. I typed back, I'll be there. Because I needed to see this through. All of it. Every step. Even the parts that didn't feel like victory. The bail hearing on Monday was anticlimactic. Caleb's public defender, a tired-looking woman in her 30s with a briefcase held together by duct tape, argued for release on his own recognizance. Martin countered with evidence of flight risk. The offshore account, the Mexico flights, the passport application. The judge denied bail. Caleb would stay in federal custody until trial. I watched from the gallery as they let him out in handcuffs. He looked broken. Smaller somehow. Like the reality of what he'd done was finally sinking in. He tried to look at me one last time. I didn't give him the satisfaction. Just stood up and walked out with Riley and Martin. The divorce finalized 3 months later. By then, Caleb's federal charges were resolved through a plea deal. His public defender had convinced him fighting was pointless. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents. Fraudulent wire transfers. International banking violations. He was looking at potential prison time if convicted on all counts. The plea deal gave him probation instead. 5 years. Full restitution of every stolen dollar. $162,000 total, to be paid in monthly installments he'd probably spend the rest of his life working off. Permanent criminal record. And a restraining order keeping him at least 500 feet from me at all times. Martin had been merciless in the divorce settlement. With Caleb's guilty plea on federal charges, there was no defense against the fraud claims. I got everything. The apartment, which was always mine anyway. My investment accounts, untouched and returned. My retirement funds. Every penny Caleb had stolen or tried to hide. He got nothing. No assets. No claims. Just debt and consequences. The last time I saw him was at the final hearing. He looked hollowed out. Defeated. 20 pounds lighter, dark circles under his eyes, wearing an ill-fitting suit his public defender had probably loaned him. When the judge finalized everything, Caleb's lawyer asked for a brief moment to speak. The judge allowed it. Your Honor, she said, my client would like to apologize to Mrs. Brennan for his actions. The judge looked at me. Mrs. Brennan, would you like to hear it? Everyone in the courtroom turned to look at me. Riley beside me, tense and protective. Martin on my other side, ready to object if needed. I thought about it. About whether I wanted to hear Caleb say he was sorry. About whether it would change anything or mean anything. No, I said simply. I wouldn't. The judge nodded. Then we're done here. Divorce is finalized. Mr. Brennan, you have 48 hours to vacate any remaining personal property from the marital residence. After that, anything left becomes Mrs. Brennan's property. Gavel down. Caleb was escorted out by his lawyer. I left through a different exit with Riley and Martin, avoiding any chance of running into him in the hallway. How do you feel? Riley asked as we walked to the parking garage. Empty, I said. And it was true. No satisfaction. No triumph. Just a hollow sense of completion. I moved back into the apartment. My apartment, the following week. Caleb had already cleared out his things. I walked through rooms that felt both familiar and foreign. The spare room where his paintings used to collect dust was empty now. The closet in the bedroom only had my clothes. The bathroom counter only had my toiletries. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt lonely. I lasted 6 months before deciding to sell. Too many memories. Too many ghosts of who I'd been when I lived there. The woman who'd trusted Caleb. Who'd worked herself into a stroke. Who'd ignored every warning sign because she was too tired to see them. A young family bought it. Husband, wife, toddler girl, and another baby on the way. I watched them walk through during the final showing, saw the wife's face light up at the kitchen, saw the husband calculate mortgage payments in his head, saw the toddler run through the empty rooms laughing. "It's perfect," the wife said to her husband. "It feels like home. I hoped they'd be happy there. Hoped they'd build something real. Hoped their marriage would be better than mine." The closing was simple. I signed papers, transferred the deed, accepted a check that was more than I'd paid for the place but less than I'd hoped. Real estate prices in Portland were weird that year. I bought a smaller loft in Northwest, closer to Riley. 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, exposed brick, open floor plan. Modern and impersonal. No history. No ghosts. Just clean space waiting for me to decide who I'd be next. With some of the money from the sale, I set up a scholarship fund. Partnered with a local nonprofit that helped women recovering from medical crises. Called it the Second Chances Fund. $5,000 annually for a woman who needed financial support to rebuild her life after health problems derailed everything. It felt good. Felt like something meaningful coming from all the pain. I returned to work about 7 months after the stroke. Part-time at first. My boss, Patricia, who'd run the real estate firm for 20 years, welcomed me back with genuine warmth and zero pressure. "Take your time," she said. "We're just glad you're alive." I started with small projects. Residential sales. Nothing too demanding. My body was mostly back to normal. No more cane, no more slurred speech, no more tremor. But I was different in ways that weren't physical. I couldn't work 80-hour weeks anymore. Couldn't sacrifice everything for a commission. Couldn't ignore my body's warning signals. I was more selective about clients. Didn't take on anyone who gave me bad vibes or made unreasonable demands. Charged more. Worked less. Made enough. Patricia noticed the change. "You're different," she said over coffee one afternoon about 10 months after I'd come back. "Better or worse?" I asked. "Just different. More boundaried, I guess. You used to say yes to everything. Now you're comfortable saying no." "The stroke taught me something," I said. "Life's too short to waste on people who drain you." Patricia smiled. "Sounds like wisdom." One evening, almost a year after the divorce finalized, Riley invited me over for dinner. Just the 2 of us. Pasta and wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd been through war together. We were halfway through the meal when she asked, "Do you ever think about forgiving him?" I set down my fork. The question hung in the air between us. Did I? Could I? "I don't think about him at all anymore," I said honestly. "Forgiveness feels like it requires me to care. And I just don't." "That's not the same as healing," Riley said gently. "I know." I took a sip of wine. "But maybe healing doesn't mean forgiveness. Maybe it just means moving forward without carrying the weight of what happened." Riley considered that. "Are you happy?" The question surprised me. Was I? "I'm different," I said after a moment. "The stroke changed me. The betrayal changed me. I'm harder now. Less trusting. More cynical about people's motives." "That's not what I asked." I looked at my sister. Really looked at her. The woman who'd given me sanctuary when I had nowhere else to go. Who'd used her legal connections to help me fight back. Who'd sat with me through physical therapy and depositions and endless court hearings. Who'd never asked for anything in return. "I'm free," I said finally. "And right now that's close enough to happy." Riley smiled. Raised her wine glass. "To freedom." I clinked my glass against hers. "To freedom." That night, back in my loft, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror and studied my reflection. 43 years old. Lines around my eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago. A hardness in my gaze that didn't exist before the stroke. Gray threading through my dark hair that I hadn't bothered to color. But there was also something else. Strength. Resilience. A quiet confidence that came from surviving something that should have destroyed me. I thought about the woman I'd been before the stroke. Before the betrayal. Ambitious, optimistic, believing hard work and love were enough. That woman felt like a stranger now. The stroke had burned her away. The betrayal had finished the job. What remained was someone harder. Colder. More calculating. I wasn't sure I liked who I'd become. But I also wasn't sure I had a choice. Sometimes people ask if I'm still angry at Caleb. I tell them the truth, I'm not. Anger is exhausting. I spent enough energy on him. What I feel now is clarity. He thought my stroke was his opportunity. Thought my vulnerability made me weak. Made me an easy target. Gave him permission to take everything I'd built. He was wrong. That thumbs up emoji I sent from the hospital bed, the one he probably interpreted as acceptance or maybe even brain damage, wasn't surrender. It was a declaration. I see you. I know what you did. And I'm coming. Some betrayals break you. Shatter you into pieces you can't put back together. Some betrayals wake something else. Something cold and calculating. Something that doesn't scream or cry or beg. Something that plans. Documents. Waits. Caleb thought he was taking everything from me while I lay unconscious and helpless. Instead, he gave me something I didn't know I had. Proof that I'm stronger than I ever knew. Proof that I can survive anything. Proof that underestimating me is a catastrophic mistake. The stroke nearly killed me. Should have killed me according to the doctors. The betrayal nearly broke me. Should have broken me according to anyone who knew the full story. But I'm still here. Sharper. Wiser. Free. And sometimes, not always but sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep I think about that moment in the hospital. Waking up to that text message. That screenshot of an empty account. Those 7 words that changed everything. I deserve this after everything I've done for you. And I think about my response. That single thumbs up emoji. The best revenge isn't fire and fury. Isn't screaming or crying or making scenes. It's ice-cold strategy. Patient justice. Letting someone dig their own grave while you document every shovelful of dirt. Caleb thought he'd won. Thought he'd gotten away with it. Thought I'd be too weak or too damaged to fight back. He couldn't have been more wrong. Game on, that emoji said. And I already won.